daughter loses inheritance for loving a chauffeur. Years later, when she discovers the failing company and her mother's cancer, she risks everything to save the family legacy. In a world where family legacy meets modern ambition, Clara Wilkins finds herself torn between her heart's desires and her mother Margaret's traditional expectations. After choosing love over duty by marrying David, her family's driver, Clara faces the consequences of defying her wealthy family's wishes. But when an unexpected crisis threatens both the family business and Margaret's health, Clara must confront the challenge of preserving her father's legacy while fighting for her own happiness. Will love be enough to heal old wounds and bridge the gap between tradition and change? Discover how one family navigates through pride, prejudice, and the power of forgiveness in this compelling drama about love, family, and the courage to follow your heart. Clara Wilkins was a determined, dreamy woman full of love, with deep roots in a family of farmers who owned a prosperous meat company, Wilkins Meats. The family's wealth and tradition were evident not only in the vast properties that stretched for miles, but also in the established reputation of the company that supplied high-quality meat to various regions. Since she was little, Clara spent her afternoons among the animals, learning about farm management and the importance of hard work. Her father, a kind and wise man, was her greatest mentor and source of inspiration. He taught her about the values of honesty, responsibility, and love for the land. The sudden decline of his health and subsequently his death was a devastating blow to Clara, leaving her with an immense void and a need to honor his legacy. After her father's death, Clara felt even more connected to the farm, taking an active role in managing the business and deciding to grow the company. She had a clear vision of modernizing operations while maintaining the family heritage. At the same time, her relationship with her mother, Margaret, became more tense. Margaret, a woman who had always lived in luxury and dreamed of putting Clara on a pedestal, wanted her daughter to marry a wealthy heir, someone who could provide security and social status. The mother's desire sharply contrasted with the deep love Clara had for David, her private driver, who had become not only a loyal friend but also the confidant of her deepest secrets. On a sunny day, while they were together near the old barn, David looked into Clara's eyes, visibly nervous. "Clara, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice trembling. "What is it, David?" Clara asked, curious and apprehensive at the same time. "I can't hide it anymore. I love you. I want to spend my life by your side." The declaration made Clara's heart race, feeling a mix of joy and fear. "I love you too, David, but what about my mother? She would never accept it." "It doesn't matter what she says. What matters is what we feel for each other," David replied, squeezing her hand tenderly. Clara knew that the love they shared was genuine. However, reality complicated her feelings. The pain of losing her father was still fresh, and with it, the pressure from her mother became increasingly heavy. Margaret had an ideal life planned for Clara, a world of parties and fancy dinners that didn't include a middle-class driver, even if he was someone who knew her soul. The anguish became evident, but the fervor of David's declaration touched her deeply, making her realize that their love deserved a chance. With tears of determination in her eyes, she finally decided to take a stand. "David, I want to be with you, no matter what happens." David smiled, relieved and happy. "Then let's be happy together, regardless of what your mother says." In a moment of passion and rebellion, Clara decided that she would face her mother to live the love she so desired, even if it meant risking her family's legacy and the peace that could still exist in the meat company that her father had loved so much. Clara was willing to follow the path of her heart. Clara's decision to marry David was an act of courage that would change their lives forever. The tension between Clara and her mother, Margaret, was palpable. On the night they announced their marriage, Margaret's screams echoed through the house. "You can't do this, Clara. You're throwing your life away," exclaimed Margaret, her face contorted with anger and despair. Clara felt crushed under her mother's pressure but remained firm. "I love David, Mother. He's the man I want to spend my life with," Clara replied, determined, although her heart was heavy. "Love doesn't pay bills, my daughter. You have no idea what you're doing." Margaret continued, her voice grave and full of frustration. Her mother's words hurt her, but Clara knew she had found her path. After the ceremony, which was simple and full of love, Clara felt the weight of the decision she had made. Margaret fulfilled her threat and disinherited her, cutting all financial and emotional ties. In their new home, a small farm that David had inherited, Clara and David committed themselves to transforming that place into their home. "Clara, maybe you should have thought more before making this decision," said David, worried as they watched the sunset. "I know, David, but I can't regret what I feel for you. We just need time to adjust," Clara replied, trying to hide her insecurity. The first months were a constant struggle. The harvests were scarce, and the work demanded a lot from them. Clara was constantly aware of the disapproving look her mother cast upon her life, and the shadow of rejection followed her. "We'll create our own happiness, Clara," said David, trying to cheer her up as they worked. "We don't need her approval." "It's easy to say, David. You don't know what it's like to carry this pain," Clara replied, with tears running down her face, revealing the intensity of her emotions. As time passed, they managed to establish a routine and began to adapt to life in the countryside. The love they shared was a foundation in difficult days, and the arrival of little Mia brought renewed light. "Look at her. Our little girl is perfect," said David, smiling as they watched Mia play in the yard. "She's everything I've ever wanted. I want to give the best to the three of us," Clara replied, dreaming of what could be, ignoring the financial pressure that continued to tighten. Chapter 3: Growing Together. Clara and David faced financial difficulties with admirable resilience, but the weight of imminent pressure made the scenario bleak. Desperation set in with each passing day, but what they didn't know was that true strength could come from where they least expected it, from the community around them. News about the couple's struggles spread through town, and soon friends and neighbors gathered to offer help. One sunny morning, Clara received a visit from Mary, one of the oldest neighbors, who brought a basket full of fresh fruits and vegetables. "Clara, we're a community, and this is how we should be," Mary said with a sincere smile. "We're organizing a bazaar to raise funds for you and David. You just need to join us." Clara felt overwhelmed by the kindness and solidarity. "But I don't want to be a burden," she stammered, though relief began to surface. "You'll never be a burden. We're all here to help. The love that you and David have shown reflects in all of us," Mary responded, hugging her warmly. That same week, the community began to mobilize. Clara saw neighbors and friends appear with donations offering not just products but also labor. Amid homemade foods and encouraging smiles, Clara realized she could find strength and hope there. "Thank you all for everything. You don't know how much this means to us," David said, emotional, while workers united to help repair the farm fence. The unity was a shot of encouragement that made the couple believe in a promising future again. "Let's have a fair. We need to show the world what we have to offer. We can sell our fresh products and even tell stories," Clara suggested at a community meeting. The idea exploded in applause. "Let's do it. We can gather everyone's products, and this will be a great way to help everyone," responded one of the neighbors, excited. The collective energy seemed to pave the way for the recovery that Clara and David so desperately needed. The following weeks were filled with hard, collaborative, and community work. Clara learned to better care for the animals, organized the vegetable harvest, and prepared everything with care. They could hardly wait to see the fruit of their efforts. On the morning of the fair, Clara, David, and Mia were radiant. With the community's help, they set up a vibrant stand. Mia ran around holding the colorful posters she had made herself. "Look, Mommy, they're all excited," she shouted, with the innocent joy of childhood. "Yes, sweetie, this is just the beginning," Clara said while watching people gathering interested in their products. The humble stable where they once felt small now seemed like a showcase of abundance and love. "You sell fresh vegetables? That's great. Can I try?" asked a customer, and David, proud, offered samples, his smile reflecting recovered confidence. The fair's success renewed everyone's hope. With each customer who bought something, Clara felt the emotional validation she needed. The community supported her unconditionally. Each purchase became one more step toward the financial stability they so desired. Chapter 4: A New Crisis. However, as the months passed, economic pressure intensified. Clara and David struggled to keep the farm running, but bills continued to pile up and product sales were insufficient to cover expenses. The nights were long and thoughts wouldn't leave their minds. "David, we received another collection letter," Clara said with a heavy heart. "I was expecting that. But we need to focus on how we can deal with this." "We can't let the situation get worse," he responded, trying to hide his worry. "Maybe we should consider a loan. That way we can pay off some debts," Clara suggested. But the idea left David apprehensive. "A loan means more debt in the future. We need to find a solution that won't trap us in these pitfalls," David stated, shaking his head. "But what else can we do? The pressure is unbearable," said Clara, feeling frustration grow. David sighed and reflected. "Let's see what we can sell beyond what we already have. Maybe we can make some homemade products?" "Great idea. We can make preserves or jams. That can increase variety," Clara responded, beginning to have hope. The following nights were pure labor. Together, Clara and David spent hours in the kitchen experimenting with recipes, transforming farm fruits into colorful preserves and jams. They were determined to maintain hope. "These are great. Here, try it," said Clara, offering David a small jar of strawberry jam. "This has potential. We need to make labels and prepare for the next fair," David agreed, smiling at her excitement. In the following days, the family worked non-stop. Mia, always cheerful, helped label the jars and arrange the stand. "I'm excited for the fair. This year we'll sell everything," said the girl, swinging her hair. The day of the fair arrived and, with it, a wave of expectation. Clara and David set up their stand and displayed their new products, anxious to see how they would be received. At first, customers were interested, but doubts arose when no one stopped to try the preserves. "It's time to act," said David, deciding to approach customers. "We have homemade jam made with fresh fruit. Come try it." He offered a small jar to a passing woman. She tried it and immediately became excited. "This jam is delicious. I'll take 3 jars," she said, smiling. The encouragement was contagious. Clara and David began to see an increase in sales. Customers approached, interested. The fair's energy was changing, and as the hours passed, the stand was full of movement. "We're selling. Look at this," Clara exclaimed, radiant. "This is great. Let's keep it up." David responded, satisfied. However, the fair's glow didn't last long. During the event, Clara spotted a familiar face. It was Margaret, her mother, who had appeared without warning. Her heart raced when she saw her mother approaching the stand. "Clara, what are you doing here?" Margaret asked with a look of disapproval. "We're selling jams and fresh vegetables. It's what we can do to survive," Clara responded, defying the disapproval. "Survive? This is work beneath your standard. You shouldn't be doing this," Margaret stated, emphasizing the disdain in her voice. Clara felt anger and sadness. "Mom, this is our work, and we're happy like this. I have a family to care for," she defended herself. "Family? You chose it by moving away from me and marrying this driver," Margaret referred to David, indignation evident in her gaze. David was silent, observing the scene. He decided to intervene. "Margaret, what matters is that we're doing our best. Clara and I built a life together, and we love our daughter." Margaret looked at him, shocked. You're the one who ruined my daughter's life," she said, resentful. The atmosphere was tense, and Clara didn't want the situation to worsen. "Mom, we need to talk, but not here and not like this. What did you come to do?" she asked. Margaret hesitated. "I wanted to see how you were, but it seems this was a mistake," she responded, already turning her back. "Why don't you stay and try to understand? We're happy and we're fighting for our family," Clara pleaded, trying to contain her frustration and hurt. "Happiness? That's an illusion. You can't ignore your responsibilities and be content with this," Margaret responded, looking at Clara with disdain. "My responsibilities are here with David and Mia, and that's more important than any expectation you have for me," Clara stated, feeling determination grow. Margaret crossed her arms, annoyed. "Still, you could have made better choices, Clara. It's sad to see my daughter in this kind of life. This kind of life is what we built together, and we're doing our best. Isn't that what life should be?" Clara asked, her voice firm. David approached, supporting Clara. "What you see here is the result of love and hard work. We're satisfied with what we have, and that's what really matters." For a moment, silence settled between them. Margaret seemed to contemplate her words, but soon averted her gaze, still reluctant to accept reality. I can't stay here to see this. If you're happy like this, fine, but I can't support this choice, said Margaret, letting out a heavy sigh. We're not asking for your support, just respect, Clara responded, feeling sadness mark her feelings. Margaret turned and began to walk away. Goodbye, Clara, she said with a tone of disdain that cut Clara's heart. Don't go. Clara murmured, but it was too late. Her mother walked away, leaving Clara and David with mixed emotions, relief, pain, and frustration. She doesn't understand. She's so stuck in the past that she can't see the present, David commented, looking to where Margaret had disappeared. I know, but it's hard not to feel the pain of her words, Clara responded, feeling her eyes burn. I tried to be strong, but the rejection still hurts. We're a family. What matters is what we built together. Let's focus on us and move forward, David said, holding her hand. Sales improved during the fair, but the encounter with Margaret left a mark. Clara questioned her choices and what she really wanted for the future. At the end of the day, while cleaning up the stand, Clara commented, I think what hurts the most is that maybe she's right about some things. Did I make the right choice? Clara, you chose love and happiness. Don't let yourself be swayed by other people's expectations. What matters is you and your family now, David insisted. Maybe. I just wish things were different, Clara said with a distant look. We'll do whatever it takes to improve the situation. We're in this together, David responded, hopeful. With renewed determination, Clara knew she needed to redouble her efforts. Life wouldn't be easy, but the fight for her happiness and her family's made her stronger each day. Clara took a deep breath, determined to find a way for their union to prosper, no matter what it took. Chapter 5. The phone call that changed everything. Clara was at home organizing document folders when her phone rang. The number on the screen made her pause. It was Margaret, her mother, whom she hadn't spoken to in months. Hesitating, she took a deep breath before answering. Hello? Clara, it's me. We need to talk. Margaret's voice sounded fragile and tired. I'm having health problems and need help. Those words hit her like a punch in the stomach. Mom, what happened? Clara asked, trying to hide the confusion and anger building inside her. I went to the doctor and they found some concerning things. I'm scared and alone here. I don't know who else to turn to, said Margaret, her voice breaking. Clara felt a wave of compassion, but also the pain of old wounds. You never wanted my help before. Why now? Because I'm your mother, Margaret responded with desperation in her voice. I need you. Clara pulled up a chair, feeling tears threatening to escape. The internal struggle was intense. How could she help someone who had despised her for so long? Mom, I'm in a different place now. I have my daughter, my husband. David, who was in the kitchen, noticed the tension and entered the room. Is everything okay, Clara? He looked at the phone in her hand and realized it was Margaret. Do you need to go to her? I don't know, David, Clara murmured, looking at the floor. I want to help, but she hurt me so much. Sometimes love needs to be rescued, even when it's been wounded, David said gently. Think of your mother as a person, not as her role in your life. She's asking for help, and this could be an opportunity to reconnect. His words penetrated her heart, but the pain of rejection was still a shadow. What if I go and she doesn't change? What if I get hurt again? Clara questioned, fear draining from her. You can't predict the future, Clara. But you can decide now, replied David, firmly. If you don't go, you'll always wonder if you should have helped. Clara fought against tears. She remembered moments when she wished for her mother's presence, but also the days when Margaret's cutting words left her sad. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, I need to think. While discussing with David, she felt strength growing inside her. What if I just try to help in this situation? Maybe it's a chance to forgive and move forward. After a few more moments of reflection, Clara finally made her decision. I'll go to her. If I don't do this, I'll always regret it. David smiled, understanding the importance of what she was about to do. I'm with you. Let's go together. Clara grabbed her keys from her purse and headed for the door. I hope this doesn't hurt me again, she said, still worried. Chapter 6. The Way Back. Clara looked out the car window as the road passed quickly. Beside her, David drove, focused on the road, and Mia was in the back seat, distracted with her tablet. The journey to Margaret's house brought a mix of anxiety and expectation. "Are you ready for this?" David asked, casting a quick glance at his wife. "I don't know," Clara confessed, distressed. "It's complicated. After everything that happened, I don't know how she'll react." The thought of reliving old pain consumed her. David nodded. "Just remember, this is a fresh start, a chance to heal old wounds." He knew it wasn't just Margaret's health at stake, but their relationship. Clara took a deep breath. As Clara observed the landscape, her mind began to wander, bringing childhood flashbacks to the surface. She remembered moments playing with Margaret in the garden, the smell of flowers, and afternoons spent picnicking under the shade of a tree. "You're my light," Margaret used to say, pulling her into a tight hug. However, these sweet memories were quickly interrupted by bitter ones. The arguments, the separation, and the silence that settled between them after Margaret's decision to distance herself. It was as if, with each passing day, Clara was not only losing her mother, but also hope for a closer future. Finally, they arrived at the house. Clara hesitated at the door, her heart racing. David noticed the hesitation and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Let's go together," he said, encouraging her. Clara took a deep breath and slowly opened the door. Margaret was in the bedroom, visibly weakened. Her pale countenance and tired eyes revealed her struggle against illness. She was surprised to see them. "Clara," the mother spoke, her voice weak but with a slight tremor. "It's good to see you." "Mom, I'm sorry," Clara responded, trying to compose herself, but the vulnerability was palpable. The tension in the air was intense. "Have you come to your senses?" Margaret replied, crossing her arms accompanied by a coughing fit that left her even paler. Despite the fragility that illness brought, her posture was still defensive and proud. "I'm not here to discuss the past, but we need to resolve this. It doesn't make sense to remain like this without understanding each other," Clara argued, looking into her mother's eyes. She felt her mother hadn't changed, but the urgency to re-establish dialogue was greater. Margaret looked away, as if fighting an internal storm. "Do you want my forgiveness for what happened? I made mistakes, but what can I do now?" she responded, feeling anxiety grow in her chest. "This isn't about forgiveness, but reconnection," Clara said, her voice firm and determined. "I miss you. It's not just me who lost. Mia also needs to know her grandmother. This division is affecting all of us." The mention of Mia made Margaret's eyes fill with tears. A heavy silence took over the room. David, aware of the tense atmosphere, decided to intervene. "Margaret, Clara is here to help you. We need to talk about this as a family." Margaret's expression softened slightly, but her eyes were still full of uncertainty. "It's hard to simply forget the pain we caused each other," she murmured. "I don't want you to forget," Clara responded, more emotional. "But we need to look forward. We can work on this together. I'm here with you." As she spoke these words, Clara realized that Margaret's vulnerability made her more human, closer to her, even as she fought against illness. "I don't know how to begin," Margaret confessed, mixing weakness and vulnerability. The contrast was painful and real. "I had so much pride, but I realize now that life is fragile. We can take the first step together. Let's just listen to each other," Clara suggested, her voice trembling with emotion. She remembered the memories she had lost, but more than that, she felt that finally they were about to find a path to reconciliation. Margaret took a deep breath, and Clara saw a spark of hope in her mother's eyes. Both were ready for this new journey. Chapter 7: Hidden Truths. During a visit to the old family house, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. Silence seemed to weigh on Clara as she examined the walls, each preserving stories and secrets she was beginning to glimpse. The house, once full of laughter and warm memories, now felt like a museum, keeping the pain of an unresolved past. Beside her, Margaret, her mother, avoided eye contact, as if fearing the weight of the past would suffocate her. "This house had life, didn't it?" Clara said, breaking the silence, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "It was a house, Clara, not a memory," Margaret responded, her tone icy and distant. "Things changed, and maybe you should understand that." The conversation became inevitable when Clara discovered the financial difficulties the family company was facing. "The administrator ran away with almost all our money," Margaret revealed with a heavy sigh, tears threatening to slip down her face. "We're in trouble, and I don't know how to recover from this." Let me help, Mom. I can do this, Clara insisted, trying to hide the urgency growing inside her. Clara, do you really think you're ready to manage the business alone? Margaret asked, her voice trembling, even as she tried to maintain a neutral tone. But the insecurity was evident. The responsibility is enormous. You know it's not just about what you want. I have my reasons, Mom, Clara responded, trying to stay calm while feeling her heart tighten. This is my path, not yours. I want to do good for all of us. Margaret's bitter laugh echoed in the room, cutting like a blade. What do you consider better? Leaving everything behind? Ignoring your challenges? Appearances aren't everything, Clara. The choice you made could impact our business irreversibly. Margaret's words resonated like a dark echo. Clara breathed deeply, fear and frustration fighting to manifest. It was at this moment that David, Clara's husband, decided to intervene. He had remained silent until then, but noticed the growing tension in the air. Margaret, understand, Clara isn't trying to tear down what you built. She wants to build something new, and maybe that can be a path for all of us. You can't understand the weight this brings to us, Margaret responded, looking away, her voice trembling. If you fail, we'll all pay for it. Her mother's vulnerability was palpable, but Clara saw it as a sign of weakness. Margaret, we need to talk about this openly. We can't let fear dominate our decisions, David insisted, standing firm. Whatever path Clara chooses, we're here as family to support her decisions. The tension between mother and daughter increased with each exchanged word. Clara felt a knot in her stomach, the fear of rejection consuming her. Mom, why don't you trust me? I'm capable of handling this. It's time for you to leave your insecurities behind and believe in me. I always believed in you, Clara, Margaret declared, her voice trembling with raw emotion. But I also know the weight each decision can carry. What you choose affects all of us. What if you're wrong? But what if I'm right? Clara countered, finally releasing all her accumulated frustration. This is the risk I need to take. I hope you can accept that. David observed the debate between them, aware that his presence could be key to mediating the situation. Margaret, maybe it's time to see this situation in a new light. Clara has her ideas, and we need to discuss how everyone can coexist with these differences. It's not about winning or losing, but an effort to find a new path together. The silence that followed was palpable. Clara and Margaret stared at each other, and at that moment, hidden truths began bubbling to the surface. The confrontation was inevitable, but perhaps, just perhaps, it could give rise to change. The defenses began to weaken, and behind the anger and fear, Clara realized that Margaret was also fighting against the pain of loss and uncertainty. I'm scared, Clara, Margaret finally confessed, the mask of strength crumbling. Chapter 8, The Turning Point. Clara took a deep breath before entering the meeting room. Since Margaret had requested her help to revitalize the company, the weight of responsibility seemed almost oppressive. She knew she would need David's support. He might be the key to keeping us on the right path, she thought. Are you ready for this? David asked, noticing his wife's nervousness. This is a big responsibility. If we don't unite now, the company might not survive, Clara responded, determined, and my mother, she needs me. As the meeting began, Clara presented her ideas for the company's rebirth. We need to modernize our methods. The market has changed, and if we don't keep up, we'll get lost, Clara explained, her passion evident. Margaret, still weakened by illness, looked suspicious. And you think everything we've built until now isn't worth it? We need to respect our history. Respecting history doesn't mean ignoring the future, Mom, Clara contested, the tension rising. We must find a balance. David tried to ease the situation. Maybe we can do a pilot project. Something that incorporates traditions but also introduces new methods. This could be a good way to test your ideas without compromising everything at once. He spoke calmly, but the nervousness hanging in the room was palpable. This is too big a risk, Margaret responded, her tone incisive. What if we fail? What do we tell our employees? They trusted me, and I can't let them down. Mom, Clara said, her eyes full of emotion. If we continue like this, afraid to take risks, we'll never go anywhere. We need to be bold. A clear tension established itself between them as the room seemed to fill with negative energy. You don't realize this isn't just about you, Clara? We're talking about years of hard work and dedication. said Margaret, her voice choked. Margaret softened her tone. I'm just trying to protect our history. This is all we have left. But what history will we have if there's no future? Clara retorted, her desperation showing through. You asked me to help you, and that's what I'm trying to do. Don't cancel our chance because of fear. At that moment, David stood up and intervened in a firm tone. We need to find common ground. This isn't about proving who's right or wrong, it's about the well-being of the company and the family. When tensions finally began to decrease, a knock on the door interrupted the discussion. Clara turned, surprised. Who could it be now? A woman entered, holding an envelope. The expressions on everyone's faces changed instantly. Sorry to interrupt, but this is for you, Clara. She approached and handed over the envelope. Clara opened it quickly, while everyone watched in silence. As her eyes scanned the written words, an expression of shock took over her face. What? This can't be true. Mom, David, look at this, Clara exclaimed, her voice trembling. We received a buyout offer for the company. They want to buy us. Immediate chaos took over the room. The tensions that were once palpable were now overshadowed by a new dilemma. This is a trap. We can't give in now, shouted Margaret. David looked at Clara. What are we going to do with this? Is it a dream or a nightmare? The pressure was growing, and Clara knew this was just the beginning of a much bigger conflict. Chapter 9. The potential for reunion. Despite the tempting offer to buy the company, Margaret was determined not to sell. This company was her late husband's legacy, the reason their family had prospered. No matter what problems they faced, the company should remain under Wilkins' control. As her illness progressed, the urgency of the situation increased. Clara became her only option to keep everything in the family. This company isn't just a business, Clara, it's your father's legacy. Margaret stated passionately, her voice tinged with pain and faith. The treatment had left her face pale, her eyes tired. You can't simply look at its challenges and decide it's easier to cut ties. This is part of who we are. Clara felt the tension growing inside her. Mom, I don't want to disregard that, but you also can't ignore reality. The company needs a new direction, and following it strictly could cost us everything we've built. Clara took a deep breath. We can't let pride blind us to possibilities. Margaret looked at her daughter, desperation growing, an emotional battle in her eyes. Do you really think selling is simply getting rid of problems? My husband dreamed of this. It's our history, and I can't let the Wilkins story end like this without a fight. There was a time when I believed legacy meant keeping things exactly as they were, but now I see that legacy can also mean adapting it for the future. Clara countered, frustration growing. And you need to stop seeing this as a betrayal of Dad's memory. I want to honor that, but I can't do it alone. At this moment, David, who was a silent observer, intervened. If selling isn't an option, then we need to find a way to revitalize the company. We can work together to transform this situation. Clara, you're capable of bringing it back to life, and I can help. Let's present fresh ideas. Mom, we need to let go of fear, insisted Clara, now in a softer tone. Think about how many people are counting on us. We can find middle ground. We can do this honoring the legacy, but still with innovation. Margaret breathed deeply, knowing Clara was speaking the truth. She didn't want to appear defeated. All right, if you really believe we can change things, then prove it to me, but promise me you won't forget where we came from. Over time, disputes about vision and values began to shape the company's culture. Conversations became more intense, but also more productive. During a meeting, Clara said, I believe by listening to new ideas, we can transform challenges into opportunities. Margaret pondered, her gaze distant, while her thoughts struggled. If we can maintain what's important to us while innovating, we can find a good balance. But Clara noticed her mother's vulnerability, and as Margaret's health deteriorated, tension grew. She knew her mother's days were numbered, and decisions had to be quick. Chapter 10. Growing Conflicts. As time passed, the differences between Clara and Margaret began to intensify. David always found himself in the middle of Clara and Margaret's discussions. That specific day, the meeting room was heavy with tension. David sat at the table, observing the two women who were trapped in a conflict that seemed endless. Clara was visibly frustrated, while Margaret maintained a defensive posture, as if about to protect herself from an attack. "We need to discuss what's happening with the company, Margaret," Clara began, with a firm voice. "We can't continue in this cycle of fears. The new approach we presented needs to be adopted quickly." "And you think just changing strategy will save everything?" Margaret retorted, her voice full of disbelief. "You're not seeing what's at stake. We're talking about years of work, our family's reputation." David hesitated, looking from one to the other. "Maybe we should take some time to think. We're all overwhelmed." He tried to mediate, but Clara's frustration was palpable. "No, David, this isn't just about what I want. I'm trying to save what's left. You know what all this represents to me." Margaret shot back, her gaze turning toward her son-in-law. "You should understand me as a mother. And I need you to understand what Clara is trying to do," David said, his tone firm now, but his heart was divided. "She's trying to help. And this place, well, it's our life too." Margaret frowned, but David's words hit her. "Clara may not know everything that was built, but I do, and I won't let this company crumble over an idea that might go against everything we fought for." Feeling the weight of conflict, David took a deep breath. "Mom, don't you see you have a fundamental role in this discussion? If you don't listen to Clara, if you keep closing yourself off, this will only cause more division. The company needs a new direction." Clara, now with a choked voice, intervened. "Mom, you still haven't understood how important David is to me. He's not just my husband, he's my support, my inspiration. He brought light to my life when I felt lost." Margaret's eyes opened in surprise. "You really think he's capable of understanding the weight of this legacy? Have you considered how much this involves?" "I love him, Mom, and not just that. He's part of me, my life and work. If you can't trust him, how do you expect me to trust you?" Clara spoke with a tone of desperation. "What do you want from me? To sacrifice my love for fear of losing what we no longer have?" Margaret swallowed hard, visibly shaken. "I didn't know your love for him was so deep. I just wanted to protect you." "No, Mom. I really love David, and this fight for the company hasn't separated me from him. On the contrary, it's brought us closer." Clara felt tears in her eyes, but didn't want to show weakness. "I don't need you to protect me from my own heart." David looked at her with admiration, feeling the emotional weight in the air. "Margaret, Clara has grown, and we need to keep up with that. Her love for me won't interfere with her dedication to this legacy. On the contrary, I believe it can make her even stronger." There was a sad silence in the room. The revelation of Clara's depth of love impacted Margaret unexpectedly. As tears formed in her eyes, she realized she had underestimated the strength of the relationship between daughter and son-in-law. An air of vulnerability enveloped the conversation. "I just wanted you to hold back, to avoid more pain. What I experienced losing your father is something I don't want you to go through," Margaret finally confessed, her voice trembling. "But I'm not you, Mom," Clara responded firmly. "I am myself, and what I built with David is part of that. We need to overcome our fears and fight a battle together as family." David felt the tension slowly ease, but the path was still full of uncertainties. The future of the Wilkins family was at a crossroads. The weight of responsibility would fall on all of them, but there was a renewed drive to seek a future together, a future where love could reign over fear. Meanwhile, Clara knew the fight had only begun. If you enjoyed Clara and Margaret's journey of love, forgiveness, and family legacy, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Clara's situation? Subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming family dramas that remind us that together we can overcome any challenge. Remember, sometimes the strongest bonds are forged in life's toughest moments.